May our Father, Messiah, and the Holy Spirit be with us. 1 Samuel chapter 26. Then the Ziphites came to Saul at Gibeah, saying, David is hiding on the hill of Hakilah, which is opposite Jeshimon. So Saul rose and went down to the wilderness of Ziph, with 3,000 chosen men of Israel, to seek David in the wilderness of Ziph. Saul encamped on the hill of Hakilah, which is opposite Jeshimon beside the road. But David remained in the wilderness. When he learned that Saul had come after him into the wilderness, David sent out spies and learned that Saul had indeed arrived. Then David set out and came to the place where Saul had camped. And David saw the place where Saul lay, with Abner, son of Ner, the commander of his army. Saul was lying within the encampment, while the army was encamped around him. Then David said to Ahimelech the Hittite, and to Joab's brother Abishai, son of Zeruiah, who will go down with me into the camp to Saul? Abishai said, I will go down with you. So David and Abishai went to the army by night. There Saul lay sleeping within the encampment, with his spear stuck in the ground at his head, and Abner and the army lay around him. Abishai said to David, God has given your enemy into your hand today. Now therefore, let me pin him to the ground with one stroke of the spear. I will not strike him twice. But David said to Abishai, do not destroy him, for who can raise his hand against our father's anointed and be guiltless? David said, as our Father in heaven lives, our Father in heaven will strike him down, or his day will come to die, or he will go down into battle and perish. Our Father in heaven forbid that I should raise my hand against our father's anointed. But now take the spear that is at his head and the water jar, and let us go. So David took the spear that was at Saul's head and the water jar, and they went away. No one saw it or knew it, nor did anyone awake, for they were all asleep, because a deep sleep from our Father in heaven had fallen upon them. Then David went over to the other side and stood on top of a hill far away, with a great distance between them. David called to the army and to Abner, son of Ner, saying, Abner, will you not answer? Then Abner replied, who are you that calls to the king? David said to Abner, are you not a man? Who is like you in Israel? Why then have you not kept watch over your lord the king? For one of the people came in to destroy your lord the king. This thing that you have done is not good. As our Father in heaven lives, you deserve to die, because you have not kept watch over your Lord, our Father in heaven's anointed. See now, where is the king's spear, or the water jar that was at his head? Saul recognized David's voice and said, is that your voice, my son David? David said, it is my voice, my lord, O king. And he added, why does my lord pursue his servant? For what have I done? What guilt is on my hands? Now therefore let my lord the king hear the words of his servant. If it is our Father in heaven who has stirred you up against me, may he accept an offering. But if it is mortals, may they be cursed before our Father in heaven, for they have driven me out today from my share in the heritage of our father, saying, go, serve other gods. Now therefore, do not let my blood fall to the ground, away from the presence of our father. For the king of Israel has come out to seek a single flea, like one who hunts a partridge in the mountains. Then Saul said, I have done wrong. Come back, my son David, for I will never harm you again, because my life was precious in your sight today. I have been a fool and have made a great mistake. David replied, here is the spear, O king. Let one of the young men come over and get it. Our Father in heaven rewards everyone for his righteousness and his faithfulness. Our Father in heaven gave you into my hand today, but I would not raise my hand against our Father's anointed. As your life was precious today in my sight, so may my life be precious in the sight of our Father in heaven, and may he rescue me from all tribulation. Then Saul said to David, blessed be you, my son David. You will do many things and will succeed in them. So David went his way, and Saul returned to his place. Chapter 27. David said in his heart, I shall now perish one day by the hand of Saul. There is nothing better for me than to escape to the land of the Philistines. Then Saul will despair of seeking me any longer within the borders of Israel, and I shall escape out of his hand. So David set out and went over, he and the 600 men who were with him, to King Achish, son of Maoch of Gath. David stayed with Achish at Gath, he and his troops, every man with his household, and David with his two wives, Ahinoam of Jezreel and Abigail of Carmel, and Nabal's widow. When Saul was told that David had fled to Gath, he no longer sought for him. Then David said to Achish, "If I have found favor in your sight, let a place be given me in one of the country towns, so that I may live there. For why should your servant live in the royal city with you?" So that day Achish gave him Ziklag. Therefore Ziklag has belonged to the kings of Judah to this day. The length of time that David lived in the country of the Philistines was 1 year and 4 months. Now David and his men went up with the made raids on the Geshurites, the Girzites, and the Amalekites, for these were the landed settlements from Telam on the way to Shur and on the land of Egypt, and on to the land of Egypt. David struck the land, leaving neither man nor woman alive, but took away the sheep, the oxen, the donkeys, the camels, and the clothing, and came back to Achish. When Achish asked, "Against whom have you made a raid today?" David would say, "Against the Negeb of Judah," or "Against the Negeb of the Jerahmeelites," or "Against the Negeb of the Kenites." David left neither man nor woman alive to be brought back to Gath, thinking they might tell about us and say, "David has done so and so." Such was his practice all the time he lived in the country of the Philistines. Achish trusted David, thinking, "He has made himself utterly abhorrent to his people Israel. Therefore he shall always be my servant." Chapter 28. In those days the Philistines gathered their forces for war to fight against Israel. Achish said to David, "You know, of course, that you and your men are to go out with me in the army." David said to Achish, "Very well, then you shall know what your servant can do." Achish said to David, "Very well, I will make you my bodyguard for life." Now Samuel had died, and all Israel had mourned for him and buried him in Ramah, his own city. Saul had expelled the mediums and the wizards from the land. The Philistines assembled and came and encamped at Shunem. Saul gathered all Israel, and they encamped at Gilboa. When Saul saw the army of the Philistines, he was afraid, and his heart trembled greatly. When Saul inquired of our Father in heaven, our Father in heaven did not answer him, not by dreams, or by Urim, or by prophets. Then Saul said to his servants, "Seek out for me a woman who is a medium, so that I may go to her and inquire of her." His servants said to him, "There is a medium at Endor." So Saul disguised himself and put on other clothes and went there, he and 2 men with him. They came to the woman by night, and he said, "Consult a spirit for me, and bring up for me the one whom I name to you." The woman said to him, "Surely you know what Saul has done, how he has cut off the mediums and the wizards from the land. Why then are you laying a snare for my life to bring about my death?" But Saul swore to her by our Father in heaven, "As our Father in heaven lives, no punishment shall come upon you for this thing." Then the woman said, "Whom shall I bring up for you?" He answered, "Bring up Samuel for me." When the woman saw Samuel, she cried out with a loud voice, and the woman said to Saul, "Why have you deceived me? You are Saul." The king said to her, "Have no fear. What do you see?" The woman said to Saul, "I see a divine being coming up out of the ground." He said to her, "What is his appearance?" She said, "An old man is coming up. He is wrapped in a robe." So Saul knew that it was Samuel, and he bowed with his face to the ground and did obeisance. Then Samuel said to Saul, "Why have you disturbed me? Why have you disturbed me by bringing me up?" Saul answered, "I am in great distress, for the Philistines are warring against me, and our Father in heaven has turned away from me and answers me no more, either by prophets or by dreams. So I have summoned you to tell me what I should do." Samuel said, Why then do you ask me, since our Father in heaven has turned from you and become your enemy? Our Father in heaven has done to you just as he spoke by me. For our Father in heaven has torn the kingdom out of your hand and given it to your neighbor, David. Because you did not obey the voice of our Father in heaven and did not carry out his fierce wrath against Amalek. Therefore, our Father has done this thing to you today. Moreover, our Father in heaven will give Israel along with you into the hands of the Philistines. And tomorrow you and your sons shall be with me. Our Father in heaven will also give the army of Israel into the hands of the Philistines. Immediately Saul fell full length on the ground, filled with fear because of the words of Samuel. And there was no strength in him, for he had eaten nothing all day and all night. The woman came to Saul, and when she saw that he was terrified, she said to him, Your servant has listened to you. I have taken my life in my hand, and have listened to what you have said to me. Now therefore, you also listen to your servant. Let me set a morsel of bread before you. Eat, that you may have strength when you go on your way. He refused, and said, I will not eat. But his servants, together with the woman, urged him, and he listened to their words. So he got up from the ground and sat on the bed. Now the woman had a fatted calf in the house. She quickly slaughtered it, and she took flour, kneaded it, and baked unleavened cakes. She put them before Saul and his servants, and they ate. Then they rose and went away that night. Chapter 29. Now the Philistines gathered all their forces at Aphek, while the Israelites were encamped by the fountain that is in Jezreel. As the lords of the Philistines were passing on by hundreds and by thousands, and David and his men were passing on in the rear with Achish, the commanders of the Philistines said, What are these Hebrews doing here? Achish said to the commanders of the Philistines, Is this not David, the servant of King Saul of Israel, who has been with me now for days and years? Since he deserted to me, I have found no fault in him to this day. But the commanders of the Philistines were angry with him, and the commanders of the Philistines said to him, Send the man back, so that he may return to the place that you have assigned him to. He shall not go down with us to battle, or else he may become an adversary to us in the battle. For how could this fellow reconcile himself to his Lord? Would it not be with the heads of the men here? Is this not David, of whom they sing to one another in dances? Saul has killed his thousands, and David his 10,000s. Then Achish called to David and said to him, As our Father in heaven lives, you have been honest, and to me it seems right that you should march out and in with me in the campaign. For I have found nothing wrong in you from the day of your coming to me until today. Nevertheless, the lords of the Philistines do not approve of you. So go back now, and go peaceably. Do nothing to displease the lords of the Philistines. David said to Achish, But what have I done? What have you found in your servant from the day I entered your service until now, that I should not go and fight against the enemies of my lord the king? Achish said to David, I know that you are blameless in my sight as an angel of our Father in heaven. Nevertheless, the commanders of the Philistines have said, He shall not go up with us to the battle. Now then rise early in the morning, you and your servants of your Lord who came with you, and go to the place that I appointed for you. As for the evil report, do not take it to heart, for you have done well before me. Start early in the morning, and leave as soon as you have light. So David set out with his men early in the morning to return to the land of the Philistines, but the Philistines went up to Jezreel. Chapter 30. Now when David and his men came to Ziklag on the third day, the Amalekites had made a raid on the Negeb and on Ziklag. They had attacked Ziklag, burned it down, and taken captive the women and all who were in it, both small and great. They killed none of them, but carried them off and went their way. When David and his men came to the city, they found it burned down, and their wives and sons and daughters were taken captive. Then David and the people who were with him raised their voices and wept until they had no more strength to weep. David's two wives also had been taken captive, Ahinoam of Jezreel and Abigail, the widow of Nabal of Carmel. David was in great danger, for the people spoke of stoning him, because all the people were bitter in spirit for their sons and daughters. But David strengthened himself in our Father in heaven, his God. David said to the priest Abiathar, son of Ahimelech, bring me the ephod. So Abiathar brought the ephod to David. David inquired of our Father in heaven, shall I pursue this band? Shall I overtake them? He answered him, pursue, for you shall overtake, and shall surely rescue. So David set out, he and the 600 men who were with him. They came to the Wadi Besor, where those stayed who were left behind. But David went on with the pursuit. He and 400 men, 200 stayed behind, too exhausted to cross the Wadi Besor. In the open country they found an Egyptian and brought him to David. They gave him bread and he ate. They gave him water to drink. They also gave him a piece of fig cake and 2 clusters of raisins. When he had eaten, his spirit revived, for he had not eaten bread or drunk water for 3 days and 3 nights. Then David said to him, to whom do you belong? Where are you from? He said, I am a young man of Egypt, servant to an Amalekite. My master left me behind because I fell sick 3 days ago. We have made a raid on the Negeb of the Cherethites, and on that which belongs to Judah, and on the Negeb of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag down. David said to him, will you take me down to this raiding party? He said, swear to me by our Father in heaven that you will not kill me, or hand me over to my master, and I will take you down to them. When he had taken him down, they were spread out all over the ground, eating and drinking and dancing, because of the great amount of spoil they had taken from the land of the Philistines and from the land of Judah. David attacked them from twilight until the evening of the next day. Not one of them escaped, except 400 young men who mounted camels and fled. David recovered all that the Amalekites had taken, and David rescued his 2 wives. Nothing was missing, whether small or great, sons or daughters, spoil or anything that had been taken. David brought back everything. David also captured all the flocks and herds, which were driven ahead of the other cattle. People said, this is David's spoil. Then David came to the 200 men who had been too exhausted to follow David and who had been left at the Wadi Besor. They went out to meet David and to meet the people who were with him. When David drew near to the people, he saluted them. Then all the corrupt and worthless fellows among the men who had gone with David said, because they did not go with us, we will not give them any of the spoil that we have recovered, except that each man may take his wife and children and leave. But David said, you shall not do so, my brothers, with what our Father in heaven has given us. He has preserved us and handed over to us the raiding party that attacked us. Who would listen to you in this matter? For the share of the one who goes down into the battle shall be the same as the share of the one who stays by the baggage. They shall share alike. From that day forward, he made it a statute and an ordinance for Israel. It continues to the present day. When David came to Ziklag, he sent part of the spoil to his friends, the elders of Judah, saying, here's a present for you from the spoil of the enemies of our Father in heaven. It was for those in Bethel, in Ramoth of the Negeb, in Jatir, in Aroer, in Sifmoth, in Eshtemoa, in Rakal, in the towns of the Jerahmeelites, in the towns of the Kenites, in Hormah, in Borashan, in Athak, in Hebron, all the places where David and his men had roamed. Chapter 31. Now the Philistines fought against Israel, and the men of Israel fled before the Philistines, and many fell on Mount Gilboa. The Philistines overtook Saul and his sons, and the Philistines killed Jonathan and Aminadab and Malchishua, the sons of Saul. The battle pressed hard upon Saul. The archers found him, and he was badly wounded by them. Then Saul said to his armor-bearer, draw your sword, and thrust me through with it, so that these uncircumcised may not come and thrust me through and make sport of me. But his armor-bearer was unwilling, for he was terrified. So Saul took his own sword and fell upon it. When his armor-bearer saw that Saul was dead, he also fell upon his sword and died with him. So Saul and his 3 sons and his armor-bearer and all his men died together on the same day. When the men of Israel, who were on the other side of the valley and those beyond the Jordan, saw that the men of Israel had fled and that Saul and his sons were dead, they forsook their towns and fled. and the Philistines came and occupied them. The next day, when the Philistines came to strip the dead, they found Saul and his 3 sons fallen on Mount Gilboa. They cut off his head, stripped off his armor, and sent messengers throughout the land of the Philistines to carry the good news to the houses of their idols and to the people. They put his armor in the temple of Astarte, and they fastened his body to the wall of Beth Shan. But when the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead heard what the Philistines had done to Saul, all the valiant men set out, traveled all night long, and took the body of Saul and the bodies of his sons from the wall of Beth Shan. They came to Jabesh and burned them there. Then they took their bones and buried them under the tamarisk tree in Jabesh and fasted 7 days. Father willing, we will continue with 2 Samuel chapter 1. May our Father, Messiah, and the Holy Spirit be with us. Repent. The kingdom of heaven is near. Peace.